Hey everybody, I'm Ginger Rothrock. I'm an investor with HG Ventures, the corporate venture arm of the Heritage Group. We are the largest private company in Indiana, got a bunch of businesses in the industrial sector, hard tech. So thanks, Jim, for inviting me to be on Three Sips. So Jim sent me three questions. The first question is, you have been involved in very innovative scientific startups like Liquidia. What are three challenges hard science entrepreneurs face in getting to market? So hard tech, deep tech, we're talking here about companies and innovators building science-based or R&D based products. So generally, venture investors and angels, they have a playbook. Their LPs have a playbook. And generally, these models don't work for deep tech startups. Curve for capital in the deep tech market is a little bit different. And the risk profile accompanying that curve is also different. So say we're going to make a piece of hardware. We want to prototype it, customers like it, you iterate, take a pencil, right? We're going to need to say, hey, what does this pencil look like, color, then we're going to build a factory to make enough, right? We file IP along the way. There's a lot of capital deployed before we start producing hundreds of thousands of pencils. Once that's done, hey, it's like printing money. We got our capital done. Here we go. The revenue can start ramping up. Compare that to, say, a piece of software, right? I can sit in my pajamas and I can make a piece of software and I can release it half done. And then I am expected to improve it over time. To keep selling it over time, to keep getting that added revenue, we're going to have to keep improving it, therefore adding money to it. So the capital requirements are a little bit different. The company trajectory is different. The development cycle and capital requirements are different than the norms for software and typical technology-enabled startups. It takes longer for companies to achieve the typical revenue metrics one might see from a software product, which makes it more difficult often to attract commercial investors. So that gets to the investors themselves. So the second point I would make is there are less VC funds here in the hard tech sector. Number of different reasons, most of which I covered. Structural issues and optics makes a lot of LPs resistant to invest in deep tech. It's a high risk field, potentially, in a capital allocation that's already labeled as high risk. And many of them don't really feel like they've got the capacity to source and diligence these types of investments and these types of funds. So, you get a lot fewer deep tech funds, a lot fewer large deep tech funds. And I've met a number of investors over the last couple of months in this industry that are really startups themselves. There are a lot of small, less than 100 million, in many cases less than $50 million new VCs working in the deep tech market and only able to write checks that are, $100,000 or less. So they're startups. I'd say the last thing that these hard science entrepreneurs might face is risks in their first pilot or sales cycle, right? So if we're thinking about a deep tech company having a liquidity event, right? Ultimately selling their products to industrial companies, partnering, that's usually a first step for many of these to show traction. But these companies don't move at the same pace as a startup. Single sales cycles in many of the industries that we operate in, automotive, aerospace, others where there's a high regulatory environment, it takes years in many cases to get a pilot to even a small commercial sale. So I'd say those are three challenges. And we'll move on to question 2. All right, Mr. Jim, question 2. As you've made the transition to the investor side, what are 3 changes in the investor industry you are working on to help the cause of the female entrepreneur who's traditionally struggled to raise capital? Right, Jim knows this is a very personal question for me as both a female investor and a former female entrepreneur. I'd say the easiest one for me is I can be a personal impact for women that pitch to our firm. I love to take intro calls with founders of all types, and I particularly like and want to take the first calls for the women. I make our first call more like meeting with a mentor than a VC. Tell me about your business, ask typical questions. Then if it looks good, I'll often send a second intro meeting where we go through our pitch deck. I'll point out areas to focus on, things that might be missing, because I find a lot of the women don't have the mentor network that knows how to pitch a VC, right? VCs, again, per my first point, they kind of have a playbook. So they like to see things a certain way. So if someone's not quite ready for that, I work to help her get ready. If it's virtual pitching, which we've seen a lot of recently, I'll point out nonverbals, which often will be more of an issue with female entrepreneurs than with men. Things like messing with your hair or giggling if they're uncomfortable, right? So I say, I'll give unfair access, but with totally fair outcomes. I'll help women get to their first pitch meeting with us. And then, like everyone else, they have to perform right. And I think it's really shown up. If you're wondering about our portfolio, by the way, our portfolio is 30% women CEOs, and we have a Techstars Accelerator. We're doing selection today as our first day of 4 of selecting our companies. And last year we had 40% women CEOs. And compare that to, say, the average number of engineers that are women. I think in 2016, the number was about 20% women engineers graduating. And if you look at all startups, again, numbers are kind of all aboard, but about 8% have women CEOs. So we're at 30% in our portfolio. Always want that to get higher, but given that we're a hard tech engineering firm that invests in those types of companies, I'm pretty proud of that. So that's the second point. Female investors invest more in women. Not surprising. But there's not that many women in the VC industry, and I'm working to be a strong influence there. We've hired a female associate. Whenever we have interns, I'm always encouraging folks and females and people of color to apply for those internships. I'd say the bar is much higher for your traditional white male trying to enter VC than it would be for a woman or person of color for the intern program. I want to support those are already in the industry as well, as far as female investors. There's a number of strong women that have really great content, want to retweet, I want to reference them, share their content on LinkedIn. And then it comes down to deals, because we're all judged in many cases on the deals that you bring in. If I have a great deal, I want to syndicate it, I'm looking for other venture partners, I see a firm that might be great, I reach out to the female investors there. Even if it's an associate, I don't care. I don't need to talk to a partner. Some people care about that. I don't. If it's a junior female member of the team, I'll talk to her. If it sounds like a good fit, she can take it to the partner and get the credit. So, and other things like suggesting other female investors to sit on panels. The last piece I'd say is helping men help women. So a lot of men I work with want to be allies. I work with some incredibly supportive men. Both the senior partners in our firm are just wonderful. I moved my family to Indiana to join a firm where those partners see me as a future managing director. They want to help me get there, and I need to help them help me and help them help female entrepreneurs. Putting in the hard work. It's more than them saying, I'll be a mentor. It's, hey, here are 3 specific things I can help you with. I'm also trying to help the folks that I work with, the men I sit on boards with, understand that there are nuances that females do that aren't normal, right? I've heard folks in pitches say, oh, she sounded really uncertain there. Like, no, she's a female. She has a bit of a high voice. That wasn't uncertainty. That was just her tone, or her makeup seemed a little bit too perfect. I'm like, honestly, like, would you ever say that to a guy? I am the only woman I believe, on all 5 boards that I sit on or observe. And so there's times when we're doing things like recruiting a new CEO. That happened. It's myself and 5 or 6 men over the age of 60. And they're talking about what qualities CEO needs to have. And they said, oh, it would be great if he had marketing experience and he had this. And I was like, he or she. They're like, oh, right. That's what I mean. He or she. And then future board meetings, I've heard them say he, and then they look at me and go, or she, and they smile and nod. So, it's the little things, but I think those things matter with these folks as they start to encounter more female entrepreneurs. All right, third question, last question. In your role at RTP, I'm sure you saw both sides, where startups approached RTI and where RTI sought out partnerships. What are 3 things startups could do to land strategic deals with larger companies for the purpose of scaling with sales? Great question. And I'd say this is, pretty straightforward. And the first thing is, it sounds easy, but you have to put the time in, is choose the right companies. So some large companies are very open. They may have open innovation groups. They may have tech scouting groups. These are signs that a company is open to working with a startup. There are lots of forums at conferences where large companies talk about their problems, find out who companies work with, use the network for introductions. You're basically looking for signals to show that a company is open to working with startups. You can look at press releases, acquisitions, if someone's involved with government grants and have some partners in that side. I think first starting with a company that's open to it is a huge deal. So I'd say that's the easiest thing to do because I think most of the companies that work with startups are fairly public about it. Then it comes down to finding the right person in the company. So you know, RTI is a wonderful place. I loved being there. But there are many folks that are very, very good at getting a big grant to work 10 years on this very specific technical problem and would not know what to do with a startup, right? So you need to find the right person within the company. Who goes to the innovation meetings like IRI, or who attends the sessions on startups or on problem solving? Who goes to forums like the ARPA-E demo day or any of these startup demo days? Or the third point is engaging with a CVC or an accelerator, CVC being a corporate venture capital group. So if a company has a corporate venture capital group, sometimes it's associated with their M&A group, sometimes not. Clearly, they're interested in working with startups. They're putting their money where their mouth is, right? Now, from CVCs, not all are as wonderful as we are. I'd say we are good in the CVC side of thing in that we separate working with our business units from our investment. Not all CVCs do that. So I'd want to make sure if you chose to work with a corporate venture capital unit as a potential investor for you, you understand how they operate. We happen to have a Techstars accelerator shown by my t-shirt. So there's multiple ways in which we engage with startups. And so that's an accelerator. There are a lot of different types of accelerators and incubators out there. I would say that the most valuable of those often are associated with a corporate partner because that's an opportunity for you to have a strategic deal with a company, to do a pilot, to do some of those difficult first tasks and gain the traction that's needed. So with that, thank you, Jim, for the opportunity, and happy to engage with anybody on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I am G Rothrock at hg.ventures and look forward to hearing to you guys.